Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 13th day of September 2021. I want to introduce the panel in studio. Richard Onyonka is the Member of Parliament for Kitutu Churches South. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Herman Manyora, lecturer and also a political commentator in the country. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Steve Ogola, an advocate of the High Court. Karibu sana to the show.
Asante.
And we have virtually attending is John Kagusha, the Speaker of Nyeri County. Good morning, Speaker.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning.
Great. And I want us to begin by looking at what is in the two dailies. On the front page of the Standard, the big story there is politics and church clash. Decision by Archbishop Sapit to bar Raylan Mudavadi from addressing congregation yesterday brings into focus a dilemma of church leaders whenever senior politicians are in attendance as next year's polls near. Of course, you see the story there, the quotations of different leaders that spoke, including Jackson Sapit, Anton Muheria, the Nyeri Archbishop, Nyeri Catholic Archbishop, and Francis Atwoli. And it is the culmination of what has been the Sunday ritual for many politicians flocking the churches to attend, but also to address. And the clerics are saying that no one stops you from attending a church for your own spiritual nourishment, but don't use that opportunity to hurl insults and competitive politics. On the front page of the Daily Nation, it's also one of the big stories. It's a root shock for Raylan Mudavadi. Politicians were served a hard pill by SCK Archbishop Jackson Sapit, who blocked them from addressing a gathering at a church function in Butere, Kakamega County. The cleric stood his ground, saying he wouldn't let leaders hijack the function and turn it into a political affair. We'll shortly be listening to some of the voices later on, but first I just want to pick your quick comments about this development. There appears to have been some discomfort among the clerics and perhaps some congregants about what politicians have turned the church to be. So what next at a time that the political gatherings are not allowed?
So I think this is a matter that should have been sorted out a long time ago. The reason for that is that there needs to be a separation between church and state, for the obvious reasons. Usually church is the lasting or the last sanctuary that we run to for emotional and mental nourishment. But you see what has happened is in Kenya, it is clearly understood that if you are thinking of running for office, then what you do is go to a church. That's where you will find parishioners or Christians who are, or religious people who are sober, waiting to listen to your story. And the belief is that the religious members will then support you. But the church leadership has also been very clever. They realized we have money which we have either stolen or which we have taken from where, and we go and dish it in the church. And they said, hey, you know, you don't have to ask anybody to account where they're getting this money from. But I think in terms of the leadership in this country, we need to start asking ourselves now, isn't our engagement with churches as the pulpit as a means and a way of campaigning, isn't it creating an environment where in fact it is encouraging the corruption, it's encouraging bad governance? And especially when you look at some of the vitriol and the epithets which are thrown in church,
right?
The issues that you bring. The Islamic church, I mean, the Islamic religion has been very clear on this matter. You go there, you go for service. You will rarely, very rarely, unless it was a major announcement that they were going to do, you will not find people talking and chatting and making the noises we make.
All right.
Yeah, I think it is something that has come a bit late, but it's a good thing. I really would like to congratulate Archbishop Sapit for standing up for what we will find very difficult to stand up.
And let's listen to him because he spoke in that event in Butere. Watch.
the church is becoming now the battleground for political expediency, and the church is no longer identified as a place of worship, and the media is not helping us in this respect, because whenever a sermon is given, they don't air it. They air political statements given in the church. And from today onward, nimepiga marufuku wanasiasa kuzungumza ndani ya kanisa Anglikana.
All right, and Speaker Kagushia, did it have to get to this? Why wouldn't politicians like yourself, I don't know whether you do that, but why wouldn't they regulate themselves?
Well, I think, first of all, I tend to disagree just a little bit with my friend, Honorable Onyonka, on the issue of politicians' involvement in church. I do not think the church and politics can exist separately. I think they are conjoined. I think they work together, and they should work together, because these are leaders. All of them. You have the spiritual leaders, you have the political leaders. All of them are people leading the same people. And I think when the church, kind of tends to say that they will not accommodate politicians, I do not think that eventually will be able to work. But also, I understand where the Bishop Sapit is coming from, because a lot of politicians, are also ill-mannered. When they get an opportunity to address the church and also to, have an opportunity to talk when there are such kind of ceremonies and events, most of them go overboard by over-politicizing, by doing politics, so to say. Leaders also need to be well-mannered. Unfortunately, as you say, they have not been able to regulate their thoughts, their speech. So a lot of them are likely to clash in church. Then others utter words that do not really go well with even what is being preached in church.
Okay.
Some of them even get vulgar. And so this makes the church leadership very, very uncomfortable. I remember one time sharing with my bishop in Nyeri, and one of the things he told me is that, Speaker, one of the things we appreciate about you, even your involvement in our churches, is that you are a very modest person, and you don't embarrass us as a church leadership, and would wish you to continue that way. So, he was admonishing me. And when I listen to that, I then understand. If, for example, you would take that direction of being very critical of other politicians, talking badly about other politicians, criticizing them negatively, insulting them, and making very strange political speech in churches. I think that is what doesn't sit very well with the church leadership. A lot of times they get very embarrassed about politicians and what they say in church. Okay. Otherwise, if politicians were to be well-mannered, if politicians were to be, give proper speech guidance, then I think there shouldn't be any problem. The political leadership engaging in church functions and even getting an opportunity to say something.
All right, Speaker. And Haman, why? Because now, if you look at the stories that we're just running there of politics, it begins with pamoja na wewe. So everything is happening in church, and politicians are having to wait for Sunday. How have we gotten here?
I mean, this is a Kenyan thing. And I understand where the bishop is coming from, but I also understand that, you see, the church is not just spiritual. There's the socio-cultural aspect of the church. And there is tradition. So he's trying to talk about another Kenya. The Kenya we know is where people, when they go to church, they must greet people. When there's a funeral, Mheshimiwa Onyonka ako hapa, wacha salamia watu. This is the Kenya we know. You cannot just change it. And the Christian church has behaved like that. They are not like Islam. You see, in Islam, everybody is the same. When you go to the mosque, you cannot say this is Sam, this Manyora. No, all of you are the same. There's no special sitting arrangement. People are completely the same in the mosque. But for Christian, you look at even the socio-cultural aspect of it. People put on their best coats, your best suit. You drive your best car to church. That is the social aspect of it. So I think it's also, I would rather myself, and I hope somebody tells him this, I wish somebody tells him this, I would rather they do what people like Bishop Gitari, Alexander Muge, Ndingi Mananzeki, Those are the people who put government to task and helped us during the second liberation. That's what Sapit should be doing. He should flag out some of these politicians and tell them, we appreciate you, come to our churches, greet people.
Right.
But you are thieves. That I would rather that.
And Advocate Ogolla, would that work at a time that innocent till proven guilty, you're becoming political now? In fact, as late as yesterday, you'd see some clips going around and saying, now we know Sapit, which side of politics his allegiance is in. I mean, so what can the church do? Is that ban enough to regulate how politicians behave when they get to church?
I think Archbishop Sapit is right. This is a victory for common sense, if you like. The problem is not with the church and the banning of politicians addressing congregants. The problem is with our politicians. They tend to have an exaggerated sense of importance and entitlement. That wherever they go, they must be recognized and they must be given an opportunity to address the gathering.
Right.
Then they have no restraint. Whether the gathering is a funeral or a somber service, like probably a consecration of a bishop, they really don't have any level of restraint. Yeah? So blocking out the church, politicians from abusing the pulpit, the pulpit, because that is what it is, to drive political agenda, which sometimes clash, and then the church is left wondering. You have Raila here, who is definitely driving his agenda. You have Musalia Mudavadi, who considers himself the regional kingpin in the Western region, so he would be the one welcoming. You know, there are even political issues, the one welcoming Raila. And then they have Wetangula here, another regional kingpin. And then maybe Kalonzo and Gilu have come from the other side. So I think he did the right thing. There is no problem in principle allowing politicians to wave and say one word. For instance, we are happy to join the congregation and the worshippers, and we wish Her Grace the Bishop success in her new career as a bishop, and we hope that if there's an opportunity to serve and also to help, we will do so as faithful congregants. End of story. But then in there, when you're given that chance, you want to abuse it. I think this is the momentum all churches need to keep. And I think eyes now, the focus should now shift to the Catholic Church. Because the Catholic Church has a huge following in this country. If they reined in on their politicians, then I think politicians will have to innovate. You know, you close one door, they will find another platform. If you close one door, the church, and then the funeral, they will begin to organize town hall meetings. The kind of congregation that were there, these are locals. They can easily find them there if they organize a separate town hall meeting at very minimal cost. So there's really no loss to the political elite. But there's everything to gain. At least we get to preserve some order. It's a consecration service.
Okay.
It's not a political service. You know, so I think that's okay.
But moving forward, how do you see the enforceability of such a directive
Very easy.
from the SEK?
Very easy to enforce. Actually, I'm a member of the All Saints Cathedral, and Bishop Sapit has been talking about this for now 2 years. Yeah, I think it's being reported as fresh news. Within the Anglican Church, he's been very clear, saying that we need to limit political utterances or conversations in church. Because again, church, there are people who belong to different formations. If you give one person a chance to speak, the other people who feel they belong to another faction, they might feel like next time we want our person to also come and be given a chance. So over time, the church, as we head towards the election, the church begins to change its character as a place of worship to a podium for campaign. So I think this is really enforceable because the politicians don't control the pulpit. The clergy do.
All right. And I want us to, excuse me, to make progress.